Welcome back, folks, to the penultimate entry in our 4-video series on top buyout candidates in the NHL for 2020. We handled the Eastern Conference in the previous 2 videos. Here we are for the Western Conference, beginning in the Central Division. As always, here are my 2 caveats. I went for the most realistic buyouts I could look at, not just necessarily who was getting paid the most money. And also, these are not official predictions. These are just candidates. These are just buyouts that would at least kind of make sense to me, but I did force myself to choose one from each team. So in some cases, teams would be better off just trading the player, and I'll mention that if I think that's the case. Let's do it. Central will be a little bit shorter because there's only 7 teams, but we're going to kick off with the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, they ended the season with just under $200,000 in cap space. Not a good position to be in when you had the poor results on the ice that the Blackhawks did. But now, of course, because of this Frankenstein's monster tournament for the Stanley Cup, Chicago's going to get an opportunity to play some postseason hockey, and that would be good for them. However, they do definitely have an albatross on their roster. It's on the back end, and this is important, and these are the decisions you have to make when you are a cap team and are trying to save some money. It's Olli Maatta. This seems very weird considering Mata's only 25 years old, but he's got 2 years left at just under $4.1 million. I don't think there's much of any trade value left here. He's very young, but it's an albatross against this team that has very little, if any, cap space to work with on a year-in, year-out basis. You can buy out Olli Maatta and save $5.4 million against the cap. That's bringing in a potential top 6 forward. I mean, you can't deny that he's getting paid too much money for what he produces on the ice, for his position even on the Blackhawks' own depth chart. Olli Maatta is the one player from the Blackhawks that I think you almost have to buy out if you want to have continued success and continue to be at least somewhat of a threat even in your division. Let's go to the Colorado Avalanche, maybe the best example of doing the most with the least, at least financially. The Avalanche, for as good as this team is, have $5.4 million in cap space. So they're certainly not hurting for any kind of money. Given that, I think the top buyout candidate for the Avalanche, staying on the back end of things, is probably Ian Cole. 31 years old. He's only got 1 year left, but they're paying him $4.25 million. This isn't a great buyout because it's not going to save them a ton of money. In fact, it only saves them $1 million total against the cap. But for lack of another better choice, and again, you can get results from other defensemen that you're getting similar to Ian Cole and paying less money for. So Cole's going to be my choice from the Avalanche, but it's not a great buyout. Kind of in a similar situation is the Dallas Stars. Now, they have a very different cap situation, however. They ended the season with less than $1,000 in salary cap space, obviously used extensive LTIR as well. My buyout candidate from the Stars is Andrew Cogliano. Now, I love that he can play basically anywhere on the ice. He can play up the middle. He can play any wing. He's 33 years old. He's only got 1 year left at $3.25 million, but there's really no huge savings to be had on the Dallas Stars in terms of buyouts without, completely hampering someone that really drives your offense or drives your team. So Cogliano's the buyout here. You're going to save $1 million against the cap by doing it. Once again, like with Ian Cole, it's not a great buyout, but it's about the best option. We go to Minnesota now, who ended the 2019-2020 season, I should say, with $2.9 million in cap space, so plenty of wiggle room, plenty of space to bring a player onto the roster. So there's no fantastic buyout option here, but I looked at Victor Rask, and I got to preface, these aren't predictions. I'm not predicting that Victor Rask is going to get bought out. He's only 27 years old. He's got 2 years left on his deal. They're only paying him $4 million, which doesn't seem crazy, but he has not produced since coming to the Minnesota Wild from Carolina. 16 points and just a +6 in 66 games. He really has not been able to translate the success he had in Carolina over in Minnesota. By buying him out, you would save $2.6 million against the cap. I don't think they're going to, but he would be the best option on the Minnesota Wild if the Wild were looking to buy somebody out. Let's go to Nashville now and look at the Predators, who ended the season with $2.3 million in cap space, so plenty of wiggle room in Nashville financially. For me, it's Colton Sissons from this roster. I like that he can play any position, any wing. He can play up the middle. He's only 26 years old. He is signed long-term, and that's really where the savings come in with buying out Colton Sissons. He signed for 6 more years at $2.857 million. It was this weird number for his cap hit. So it's well under $3 million, and it is a long-term contract, but he's only probably got a 30-point ceiling, maybe. So, I mean, he's definitely a fringe top 9/bottom 6 forward. I don't think he's got a ton of trade value. So if you were Nashville and you really wanted to shed some cap space and go after a big fish free agent, Colton Sissons would be a pretty good buyout, because he is going to save you $5.5 million against the cap across the entire length of the buyout. Something they might have to consider. Let's go to St. Louis now and look at the Blues. Now, the Blues had less than $25,000 in cap space at the end of the season, so very, very, very little room. Obviously, they used a bunch of LTIR as well. My target here from the Blues is Tyler Bozak up the middle. He's 34 years old. He's only got 1 year left on his deal, so once again, could very well be like a trade deadline rental trade target for somebody. But at 34 with only 1 year left, $5 million. He does have a modified no trade clause as well, which is, kind of muddies the water there, but he's only produced less than half a point a game, and he's a -3. And he's maybe a third-line center on the Blues, probably a fourth-line center if we're being perfectly honest. Maybe only a third-line center anywhere else. I think Bozak is a buyout opportunity. It would save the Blues $1.4 million against the cap, so there is definitely some cap savings to be had. You can probably hear that my fridge just went off. Luckily, we are on the last team of the Central Division, and that is the Winnipeg Jets. $3.7 million in cap space at the end of this past season. My target for the Jets is Mathieu Perreault. And once again, I like that he can play basically anywhere on any forward position. He's 32 years old, 1 year left on his deal, $4.125 million. So again, maybe a trade deadline rental acquisition target, possibly. The Jets have ample depth on the wing. That's my thing. Unless you're going to stick to Mathieu Perreault being a center, which I don't necessarily think is what the Jets want to do with him long term. They have tons of depth on the wing, basically on both sides. You could get rid of a guy like Mathieu Perreault, save your $1.3 million against the cap, and try to bring in another option at a spot where maybe you don't have quite as much depth. That's the main reason that I targeted Perreault. Central Division. Recorded in less than 10 minutes, so that's going to be a short video. And we are now on to the final division of these videos, that being the Pacific Division. 8 more teams to look over. It'll be the last video in this series. Thank you very much for watching, and you've come this far. Might as well finish it off. See you for the Pacific Division video.